Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, your host for the House of Hardcore podcast, Tommy Dreamer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the House of Hardcore podcast. I'm your host, Tommy Dreamer, and this week I have two guys who were pillars of my House of Hardcore promotion, as well as two guys who kind of made it all happen. And now I'm super duper proud of them because they just were in the Crockett Cup. The now Vik Dalishus and Hale Collins, welcome to the show.
Hello, Tommy. Thank you for having us.
What's going on, gentlemen? Did you just wish me a happy new year in frigging March? What is wrong with him?
That's how we're starting the interview, with a happy new year in March. Maybe it was a happy spring. Happy spring.
Yeah, well, happy spring, everybody.
And why Vik is the speaker of this team. This is going to be an interesting one. Trying to get more notifications, more people recognizing you, and yet they're going to say, what is wrong with Hale Collins? Something that me and Vik have known for a long, long time.
Man, he's been on his best behavior, though, man. I think that was just a minor slip.
That's I'm around Dreamer again.
Yeah.
All right.
You gotta bring her on sushi, then we'll be fine.
Yep.
All right. We will go with Vik first. I ask everybody this question. What got you hooked on professional wrestling?
Man, I was watching Survivor Series in 1988, I believe, and I remember watching Sam Houston in the match getting beat up, and that's my very first wrestling memory is of a Survivor Series, a Thanksgiving night, everybody at the house, and everyone at the table eating their food, and I remember sitting down Indian style in front of the television, like, what is this? I was completely taken back from it. And my dad went to the first 8. I remember each year my dad would be gone in the spring. I'm like, where's he going? What's he doing? And he was going to check out WrestleMania. So I was hooked on it from the moment I saw it. As soon as I saw pro wrestling, I knew that that's what I wanted to be. That's what I wanted to do. And literally from the moment I was a little tiny kid, every choice I made was to get myself into wrestling.
God, I know that person. That's me looking in the mirror. Hell.
It was Saturday's main event when the evil twin refs turned on Hulk Hogan and got Andre the belt, or Ted DiBiase the title.
Dude, $1 million man had so much money, he had a clone is what they did, or a person have plastic surgery is actually what they said instead of like the twin brother, which is fascinating. So that's what got you hooked?
Yeah, ever since then I watched every week, just like that. And I actually skipped, my parents tried to get me in Sunday school, and I skipped that to watch WWF Superstars.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have a favorite growing up?
Just like everybody else, it was Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
Well, how could you, just like everybody else, they hated each other. How could you like two of the guys who hated each other?
I like both styles.
Nice.
I love how Shawn Michaels sold, and I love Bret Hart's wrestling techniques.
I heard he is the best there is, the best there was, best there ever will be.
Yeah, but Shawn Michaels selling was just fun. I just wanted to do it, just sell like him and stuff like that.
Vik, who was your favorite?
I was a big Hulkamaniac when I was a little kid, man. I had all I wanted to do was rip the shirt off. I remember ripping my own T-shirts. My dad used to get so mad. I would just rip off regular T-shirts because you had to cut them first, and then you could rip them because I wasn't strong enough to rip them. I remember at WrestleMania 8, when Papa Shango and Sid were beating up the Hulkster. I remember standing on my chair in my section, and I was just screaming at the top of my lungs for the Hulkster. And then the Warrior came back, and like the place exploded. As a kid, I was very into the energy that like would come with Hogan Must Pose and stuff like that. It was just awesome. Like the crowd was, when they would just pop through him coming out, they would just do the whole screaming and yelling at the end. I was very into all of the theatrics and the energy of it.
Well, Tommy, it really depends on the generation. Like I liked Ultra Warrior, then transitioned to Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. Then it transitioned to ECW, and then just to different time zones when you want like the favorite guy.
Here's my favorite part about this tag team right now, and because I've been around them for a long, long time. Vic's internet is a little shaky and it's frozen. Hale's internet is perfect, but while Vic is frozen, Hale just stops moving, like in his home, and just freezes normally. You don't even realize you're doing these things. For you, Hale, I remember you because you pointed it out years later, going to ECW shows in Poughkeepsie, and I knew what a big ECW fan you were. And the moment you pointed me out, I was like, I totally remembered you, kid.
Yeah, I have a couple ECW tickets signed by you too, still on my little collecting thing. But yeah, like ECW really grabbed me because I was really tired of like the WWF stuff. It was kind of getting kooky and I was getting more mature. So then I stayed up one night late, watched MSG, popped on like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and bam, I saw this all new wrestling. And it really inspired me to actually turn a fan to a pro because I saw people wrestle I had a chance to be. Like for example, the Sandman looks like my uncle at a barbecue. You know what I mean? So I was like, there's an opportunity here to actually pursue this professional wrestling because back WWE looks like a bunch of jocks. I never made varsity football. I never did any of that stuff. So I was like, this is actually a good chance for me to actually go through this. And it was definitely ECW that inspired me to become a pro wrestler. My favorites were, not just saying this, but you, Sabu, RVD, and I liked Roadkill, Darren Doran.
I love if you go back and you can watch it on the network, the Poughkeepsie shows where you wore like a wig or something to the one show, and you can clearly see who you are now.
Well, the thing is, I really I wanted to stand out because that's when I really try to get that's where I got the bug to be a pro wrestler. I want to get the fan reaction. So I snuck in a blue wig, blue shirt, blue pants, and everything else, and I went to the bathroom, changed, and I came back down and. I always had front row because I would wait in line at 4 a.m. I would skip school and everything and wait in line at 4 a.m. for the Ticketmaster to get there first in line. And there was always this one guy who was always in front of me that would buy 10 tickets just to piss me off. But I always had front row, so the fans hated that I had front row every time. And also hated my outfit. They hated everything. And it actually turned into like a little act I had because they all booed me and all this other stuff. And
you had a gimmick, brother.
Yeah, I had a gimmick. I never heckled the wrestlers, though. I actually respected them when I was 15. I never heckled them.
Now, Vic, so I never knew this about you, that you were at that WrestleMania.
Yeah, man.
How many WrestleManias have you been to?
I've been to 2.
Well, and your dad took you there?
Yeah, he took me to WrestleMania 8 in Indianapolis. One of the coolest memories I have is going to the Wrestler Hotel and getting autographs with everybody. And Owen Hart, one of those doors that spins around, and everybody's trying to get autographs. And I stuck my arm in the door to get Owen's autograph, and he actually, all the way around through the door, came out, signed my autograph, and gave me. I got that special autograph. I was there for that too, in person in Montreal. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
All right. So you're a big fan. Did you grow up in the upstate New York area, right?
Yes. Right in Poughkeepsie. Hale and I went to school together.
I didn't know that. Or maybe I did and I forgot. That's pretty cool because you guys then become a tag team. How do you this is for Vic, become a pro wrestler? Like, how do you like training and all that stuff?
I was playing football at Utica College, and I got in Albany. And the guys that were in the first match, they announced them. It was a guy named Dave Danger and JP Black versus the Acolytes. And they announced them from Albany, New York. And I was like, well, if they're from Albany, then that means that there's got to be a wrestling school around here somewhere. And I had looked for schools my whole life, but I hadn't found one anywhere close. And coincidentally, those guys, because that was their first dark match shot, they got a story in the newspaper a couple of days later. And the story said that there was a wrestling school called the World of Hurt Wrestling in Schenectady. So the very next week, I drove to that school with my money. I walked in, I saw a wrestling ring. There didn't have to be any discussion about anything else. There was a wrestling ring in the building. I gave the guy my money, and off we went. So my first trainer was one of the guys that was in that match, JP Black. And they were my break-in for the first like 3 or 4 months. And then they started taking me to Massachusetts, where I met Dr. Tom Pritchard. And I started doing every Dr. Tom Pritchard camp that I could. And at the same time I was doing Dr. Tom camps, I flew down to Florida and went to the Dory Funk School so that I could learn what that was all about, the Funkin' Conservatory. And then with Dr. Tom, I just kept doing those camps, and Aaron Stevens and I ended up being two of the guys that were always kind of the standouts in those camps. And I got myself booked for my first set of dark matches from there for WWE in January of 2003. So I wrestled Sean O'Hare in my first one in Providence, Rhode Island. And then the next night was in Albany against Dave Danger. And I got a win. And the Fink announced me as the winner. Boom.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I'm sure your trainers did not get much offense wrestling the Acolytes. That's a side note.
No, man, not at all. They were clothesline from hell all the way.
And then for a while you moved down to OVW.
Yep, that I got invited to the first OVW tryout camp in 2003, and they selected, I think it was 8 guys from that camp to come and train full time at OVW. It was me, Paulie Normus, Vic Devine, Elijah Burke, Mike Mondo. I know I'm missing a couple more. Chad Beast was invited too. So it was those guys from that camp. And then we kind of got started there, 2003 to 2005. I was in OVW, and I wrestled as just myself for a while. I was in a tag team called the Hawaiian Island Boys with Mike Taylor. And then I became Vik Dalishus. And part of becoming Vik Dalishus was I was going to college at the time, and I needed to graduate college. My final exam was to create a character that was going to debut on television. So I worked hand in hand with Jim Cornette and my college producer or college professor, and we came up with a plan that I would work with Jim and establish like who Vik Dalishus was, what Vik Dalishus was going to be on the television. And then I wrestled Elijah Burke in my debut match, and that was how I passed college.
Wow, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll get to you in a second. Also, by the way, looking at you and in the shape that you're in and with your beard, you look like a young Scott Norton right now. Just saying, with that hat back ways, you're in the zone right now, and I love it. Hale, how do you go about to become a professional wrestler? This story I do know, but my listeners do not.
Well, like instead of looking up colleges, I looked up wrestling schools, and I wasn't just going to go to any wrestling school because I wanted to go to the best. So I did some research. I found Johnny Rods because I looked at the alumni, and the place I wanted to go, which was ECW. A lot of the guys went there, so I thought it was the best place to go for me. You had Bill Tamont. You look it up. You went there.
Best student ever.
Devon went there. I mean, a list of guys at the time were all in ECW. So I was like, that's the place I got to go. So then so I sent Johnny Rods a letter saying I wanted to join a school, and he sends me back a business card, and I'm like, that's cool. So I got his business card, which I still have, and then I have
I still have mine.
Yeah. So then I had it in my wallet for years because it was like awesome. But then
Wait, hang on. Vic, I'm sure you've seen this card, but how it's like in front of like the ABC Wide World of Sports thing, correct? And he's got like his flexing and his tricep, right?
Dude.
That's the card.
yeah, it was
Dude,
like, yeah, it
that
was
thing is awesome.
so then as randomly as it sounds, I went to an autograph sign for Nova at the Dragons Den in Poughkeepsie, and I'm waiting in line to just meet him. And this kid in front of me goes, "Yeah, I'm going to go to this wrestling school, Johnny Rods." I'm like, "Really? You're going to go with Johnny Rods?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "That's strange." I just got a letter. I sent a letter to him. He said, "Just come by and check out his school." He goes, "Yeah, but he's coming down, checking and he's going to eat my family restaurant. We're going to talk business how we're going to join the school." And I'm like, "What the hell is this? Like, why? How is this happening?" So I made friends with him. And then that weekend, Johnny Rods did come down because he had to talk to his parents because he's only 16. So he had like consent. And I'm sitting there, like, I walk in, I'm like, "Hey, I'm the guy that sent you that." He goes, "How'd you get the address?" And I'm like, I don't remember how I got the address, but I scored it. And he's like, "All right." So this kid was very familiar with going down to the city, which I never did because I'm from a farm town and I had no idea like anything about the city. I'd never been there before in my life. So I just we hopped on the train, then we did the subways. We got lost every time for the first 3 months. And I finally made it there. It was at the time, it's not the best place to be in Brooklyn at 18, not knowing anything. So I went there and I went to meet him, and I delivered about thousands of pizzas to come up with the money for the school. I went there and I'm sitting there talking to Johnny's awesome office with all the pictures and everything else. You're 18, fresh. You see all these awesome office of all this history. And then Big Dick Dudley walks in with his snakeskin cowboy boots. And I'm like, "Holy shit, that's Big Dick Dudley. That's awesome." And he just walks in, "Hey guys," and just sits down, the biggest human at the time I think I've ever met. And that sold it for me. I'm like, all right, well, Big Dick Dudley just walked in like it was nothing. And this is the school for me. So I just signed up, and those guys kicked my ass pretty bad for a good year. Took a million bumps. The ring was hard as hell. So to all the guys out there now, the ring that I trained in and Tommy trained also in was like cement. If you didn't bump right, it was like landing on the floor. So I used to go home messed up and trying to hide it because my parents didn't know I was going to this wrestling school until 2 years later. So like I was working at this pizzeria.
So wait, where did your parents think you were for all these hours? Because it's at least from Poughkeepsie to Brooklyn, it's at least a 2-hour commute one way.
2.5 altogether.
And where did you think you were?
Delivering pizza. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, there was not really any cell phones then, right. So you just disappeared all day, and it didn't really matter, just as long as you came home. So I would go there. I would get the 10:30 train and get there by like 12. Train till like 6, 7. Get home at like 10, and that would be my 2 days a week, Mondays and Thursdays. Travel there and travel back for a good 2 years. So then those guys were cool. Like they're tough at the time. I took a lot of unnecessary bumps on a hard ass ring. But what it did was it got me ready for any ring. I could go bump in any ring now. Like I could. Nowadays you can bump wrong and still feel okay. So then after that, I needed to do something because I kept going down there. How Johnny is, he doesn't let you leave the school unless it's his blessing. So I'm like, so he finally gave me his blessing because I met Tony DeVito, and he opened up a school in Newburgh, which is only like 20 minutes away. So Tony DeVito took me under his wing and then brought me around. And Johnny said it was cool because he liked Tony from Angel, from the Baldies. He says, just go ahead. I know it's far for you. Just go with him, do your thing. And then I just started hanging out with Tony, doing shows, and eventually did Ring of Honor ring crew for 2 years with Tony and all that. And then Vic moved back to New York from OVW.
Hey there, auto mechanics and super cool do-it-yourself guys who work on their own cars. I want to tell you about rockauto.com, the online store with every auto part at the best prices. This is your one-stop shop for everything auto parts. RockAuto.com has been in the business for 20 years, and they make it easy to find the parts you need at the best possible prices. No more talking to counter guys who need to order your parts, aren't really sure what you're looking for, never have quite what you need, and then after all the hassle will still charge you storefront markups. At rockauto.com, you can easily find everything you need, and whether you're a mechanic, an auto shop, or working on your own car, everyone has access to the same incredible pricing at rockauto.com. So if you're a car guy right now, go to rockauto.com and check out the parts available for your car. You're going to have so much fun looking at car parts. So once more, go to rockauto.com. No promo code needed, as their pricing is already that good. When you order, make sure you tell rockauto.com you heard about them here on the House of Hardcore podcast. rockauto.com. Now let's get back into it. For you, Hale, that's where I first meet you. I remember meeting you while you were actually making pizzas, because he worked at the restaurant that Ron Buffone, the executive producer of ECW, that was one of Ron's first things outside of after ECW goes away. He opens up a pizzeria, and I met Ron there, and you were working there. And all I remember was this kid's smile from ear to ear meeting me. And I was just smiling because I was getting pizza. And like, Hale, this shouldn't, Vic, this shouldn't surprise you. He didn't really ask me any questions whatsoever. He was like staring at me like I was like this like prized person or like possession or like the hottest girl he's ever seen, just like smiling at me the entire time.
Well, it was the weirdest thing, because like I started making pizza, and the guy, Ron, looks at me, goes, "Do you know who I am? Like, what do you do on the side?" I'm like, "I do this professional wrestling. I'm trying anyway." He's like, "Do you know who I am?" And I'm like, at the time there was no internet, so I don't know who Ron Buffone is. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what he did, whatever. He goes, "I'm the guy that, like, you know, named off his credentials in ECW." I'm like, holy shit, this is pretty awesome. Like, what's the odds? You know?
And he specifically calls me and tells me not only to come to, but he wanted me to meet Hale. And Hale doesn't say shit to me the entire time. He just smiles at me like he's like trying to impress me to go out on a date or something. Like, just smiling the whole time.
Well,
And
it's not
like,
something that happens every day.
I think he just served me pizza and like, do you want anything else?
Well, clearly it worked. He must have done something right. We're having this conversation.
Well, at the time, remember how rare it was to meet someone then? I mean, I don't know.
Oh, I'm so happy we're friends. Anyway.
What was hard to get in with you, Dreamer? There's no way to, like, I remember you come to OVW and I'm like, how can I talk to Dreamer? I didn't have a contract. I was just like a guy trying to get a job. And like, I just remember going up to him like, my parents are from Yonkers. Like, I didn't have anything else to say. And you're like, oh yeah, cool. That was my in with Dreamer, Yonkers.
Well, my in with you also started with a phone call, because you hit me up with a phone call like I've never been hit up with before by a person, an unknown extra. And you just like, "Hey man, can I talk to you for a second?" And I was like, okay. And a lot of people said back then, like, they were in, you guys know me now, and I feel I'm still kind of the same, but everyone like had this, like, you're very intimidating. And I'm like, I don't feel I am, but yes, I'm not going to just be like open up super duper nice guy to total strangers. But like, you were just like, "Listen, man, this is the deal." And I'm like, and you just gave out your complete pitch to me. And I was like, all right, well, okay, I'll try to do this for you. But like, that was our first, like, where I really feel like I was like, this guy's a little different. You remember this conversation?
I absolutely do. I was working with Paul Heyman, had just come into OVW, and I had just spent like probably a month working with Al Snow about like trying to come up with some character to get myself onto television. And I went and I was like filming these different vignettes, and I was like editing them and doing all of this stuff. And I remember I showed it to Paul, and he was like, "This is dog shit." Like, he was like, "This is awful." And I had like I wouldn't, now looking back, I don't really expect much of it. Shouldn't have expected much of a different reaction. But at the time, it was like I had put everything into it, and I was just trying to get an opportunity. Everybody else that I had been with at OVW, like that was doing everything that I was doing, got signed. And I had just had a match with CM Punk on Sunday Night Heat, and it was supposed to be his debut with Mickie James. And I felt I had done really well in the match. Johnny Ace was our agent. And when we came, after everything kind of settled down, they were like, they hated the match. They're not going to air it.
I remember this, and I did not know that was you as his opponent.
Holy shit, man. It was real bad. So like,
oh my gosh.
At that point, I was like back to OVW with no contract. I was like, I just wrestled CM Punk, and everyone said it. Like when I came through the curtain, everyone was like, here's what you do when they're going to talk to you about a contract. This is how it goes. It's like everything. And then I talked to Punk when it was done. He's like, man, they hated it. They're not even going to air it. That was the shit. I've been getting yelled at for 2 hours. And that to have that go on and then show the vignettes to Paul, and he was like, this is garbage. I was just at my wit's end. I'm like, well, I'm just going to call Dreamer because I don't know what else to do. And you said, well, try something different. And I went down to Deep South and I trained with Bill for a little while, and I stayed there for about a month, but it was just not the right fit for me at the time. And I was trying to just figure out what I wanted to do with this, because I didn't know what to do. I thought if I got in, if I was really good or come up with something, just trying to find a way to get noticed and just get a spot. And I spent all that time in OVW, and I watched Jim come up with Eminem, the Heartthrobs, whatever John Toland and Chad Wicks were called.
The Dicks.
Just I watched them put together that tag team energy, and how they did it with entrances and vignettes and stuff like that. And I really just took that information that I had watched and seen work, and I just tried to apply it to what Hale and I were going to do. And it seemed to kind of click when we just started doing it right from there. So that conversation I had with you right there pretty much led into teaming up with Hale, because I just didn't know what to do.
Right. Just for our listeners' sake, and I know I've spoken to this, and I've spoken to CM Punk about this. Matt and Jeff, I think they fired Jeff. Matt's maybe gone. Lita is injured. They are trying to recreate the next Matt and Lita, and they did CM Punk and Mickie James as this new Team Extreme, because, and I remember it, Johnny's like, CM Punk's got the similar physique to a Jeff Hardy, he's got tattoos, and Mickey's got the Lita vibe. So they were just trying to clone Matt and Lita, but they were also trying to make it like Jeff and Lita. And I remember when Pug came to the back, Johnny's like, where's all the moonsaults and the swanton and all that stuff? And Punk's like, I don't do that. And meanwhile, he's been in the developmental system, and John's like, what do you mean you don't do that? And they wanted him to be like Jeff Hardy meets Matt Hardy and Mickie being Lita. And they did none of that stuff. And they were primed and ready to push this new Team Extreme. And Punk's greatest answer was I don't do that. Was phenomenal. And then they're just, because he's under contract, and I was just like, oh, this is the worst day ever. Because then of course it falls back on me, and I'm like, yeah, man, why don't you watch all the weeks of television this guy's been on to see? But then it's of course my fault working in the office. I totally did not remember that was you in that match. Wow.
Dude, the craziest part, I remember when Johnny Ace was putting the match together, and we're standing there, and he looks at Punk and he says, so what do you do off the top? And Punk literally looks at him and goes, have you ever watched my stuff? He's like, I don't do anything off the top. And the finish, he made the finish be a leg drop off the top. And how he landed was a little weird. And you could just tell it wasn't something he felt completely comfortable with doing as the finish of the match. And I remember feeling
Boy, that's really weird that the head of developmental doesn't know what he does. Like, he's like, it was the Summer of Punk. He was just the Ring of Honor champion. Like,
well, technically,
everybody knows
I
what
was
he
the head of
does.
developmental, and Johnny was the head of talent relations.
Oh yeah, sorry.
And all those OVW tapes that would sit in his office, VCR style, maybe weren't watched. And listen,
Well,
man, I didn't know that part either, but kudos to Punk for saying that, because back then, like, you didn't speak up.
yes, for sure. I remember being taken back, like, whoa.
Wow. All right. Now here's the other interesting part, because when we all hooked up back together, you had told me, and you just pitched it, how you hook up with Hale, but I have no clue until I experienced it years later about you telling me we were working full time as independent wrestlers down south. And I was like, what? Like, there? And you were like, yeah, we were working indies. And then I got to experience it years later. But tell me about that. Cause like, okay, so now you're at Wits End. You went to high school with Hale, which is cool. But then, like, how do you guys decide, like, we're going to move down south? And then, as well as, we're going to wrestle 7 nights a week on crappy indies that nobody's ever heard of unless you're in those towns.
Well, Hale came up with the name The Now. And when I remember speaking with Hale, right around the time that I had actually talked to you, and he told me what he was doing. I remember I was standing in Kentucky. I remember right where I was. And he said that he was going to start doing this character called The Now. And he got the idea from watching Wayne's World. And when he had seen Wayne gets out of the car and goes up to the guitar, and Garth says, "Give it up, Wayne. You'll never afford it. Live in the now." And I remember Hale said it to me, and I was like, man, that's good. Like, that's really good. And he had been doing some Dr. Tom camps also. So he was kind of on that path too. And I had just said, I'm going to move back up north. And there was an opportunity where I was either going to start doing some tag team wrestling with Mike Bell, because he had moved away and come back to Poughkeepsie from OVW, or I had an opportunity to team with Hale. And I felt that the idea of The Now was just, the more I wrapped my head around it, it was something that we could constantly always be now. It would be something that would never be old. It's something we could always freshen up, something that we could always make topical, something that could always be new and fresh. It would never be old. And Hale, when he first started talking about it, actually talked to Ron Buffone, and Ron Buffone was just, you guys need to copyright this, trademark it right away. You need to copyright, trademark this right away. And Hale was just all about it. Like, hey man, I think we're onto something here. And he really pushed real hard to have that copyrighted and trademarked. We've had that since 2006, because we had somebody like Ron who was telling us, hey, this is something, at some point it could be really awesome for you guys, and you're going to want to own it. We didn't have that foresight back then at all. Like, you know, we were just trying to do whatever we could. So when we started teaming up, I had the experience from OVW where there was a lot of tag team wrestling, and I'd spent a lot of time tag team wrestling. Hale hadn't had any partners while he was on the indies. He was doing a lot of singles work. So it was kind of like learning on the fly. Every match that we did, we were just practicing some different things of different heat spots, our like double team moves, things that worked out well together. We really wanted to have an entrance. It was important to us to have matching gear. We didn't want to be a tag team that didn't have matching gear. So Hale spent a lot of time really just being very meticulous about designing our gear and who was going to make it for us. And between doing an entrance where we would practice and tried multiple different things to see what would finally work, and then getting out there every night and doing as much as we could, we were at a point where we needed to do it more often. And we had sent some tapes to Dr. Tom, and he had just left, I believe he had left their developmental system, and he was kind of wrestling on his own in the South. And he said, if you guys want to come down here, I'll hook you up with bookings. And
get you guys wrestling more often than you are. So we took that leap of faith, and we didn't know where we were going, who we were staying with. We ended up crashing with Dr. Tom had a guy that he wanted to have as our manager. His name was Logan Chase. And he had a very
Jim Cornish.
Jim Cornette type vibe to him. So he hooked us up with a place to stay while we were down there. We were sleeping on someone's couch and wrestling every place that was in the South that we could get to. We were wrestling in flea markets. We were wrestling in places that had dirt floors. If there was a wrestling show, we were doing it. And a lot of times we were doing it for very little money or a hot dog and a handshake. And it was about the experience. And by the time we were done with it, we were 8 months in, and we were, like a well-oiled machine at that point. We had our stuff down. Our confidence was at a point where we felt that we were ready to hang with just about anybody at that point. And really, we really gelled as a team by having all that time together, spending every minute with each other. And the thing we had to work on from there on forward was our bodies. So, I mean, hell, I don't want to speak for you. I may remember it a little different, but that's kind of where we're at.
Oh, could have said it better myself.
Cool.
That's like a Hale promo. And I joke, and for our listeners, I joke about this because both these guys I'm super duper tight with, as well as like I've been friends with them for a long, long time. And then when we, I'll tell the story in a little bit, but like they really helped me at a different time. But Hale, if like still to this day, because within a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, text me and like, I still have a hard time cutting promos. And he doesn't talk in a lot of their stuff, and a lot of the stuff I had seen, like, and Hale would just point at the camera and I'd be like, what's wrong with you? But like when you talk about, and for Vic, man, a lot of, sadly, this was the business then. They judge a book by its cover. A lot of it was your physique, your body. You're not tall, and your body was just okay. And as opposed to what you have created now, if you would have had looked like you did now back then, it would have probably been a much easier road for you. I mean, I'll look at myself like, hey, could I have been WWE champion? Sure, I could have. But then if you go back and you realize it, well, this guy wrestles in a shirt, number one. Two, every time this guy goes and wrestles, they chant for another company. So it's like, could you be? Sure. Would I be? Never. But I get it. And I know you get that too,
Yeah.
Because you're wrestling. I've wrestled both you guys. Hell, I entrusted you with my namesake for training guys. You're both very, very good in the ring. That is the one thing, like, they'll look at you like, oh, that guy, well, am I going to hire that guy or the proverbial 6'2" with ab guy? Well, that guy isn't a good wrestler, but he could be, but that guy is a good wrestler, but he can't get taller. It sucks.
Yeah.
That's how it was. It's no longer like that, which is great. Moving forward. So I got to think, like, I'm trying to go time-wise. I mean, now I know you guys are doing all stuff, like you're working a lot of indies, especially in like, the upstate New York area, but like, as well as, Poughkeepsie. I run back into you guys. Now I'm out of WWE. I run into you guys again at indie shows, and also working up in the Poughkeepsie building. And it's, I believe, again, Vic. I don't know if it was, because now I'm starting to learn too. Hale's kind of an idea guy, though I already asked him off camera about an idea. But you come and approach me like you're another one, Vic, where you're like, hey, man, I want to talk to you. We want to sit down and talk to you. And I was like, okay, what's up? And you approached me about opening up a wrestling school.
Yep. We had the Polish club in Poughkeepsie, actually, if you remember that. I'd gotten some friends that had
that building.
Yeah. And it was like, that was the idea at first, was to go there. And I remember just walking you through there, seeing those wheels start turning. Like, he didn't say no. He didn't say no.
I should have bought that building and just hung on to it, because that parking lot alone would have been amazing.
Right.
It was actually Ron Buffon who talked me out of buying the building.
Really?
Well, here's why. Ron had bought that entire where the pizzeria was. Ron bought that entire center. And then the town came in and said, now that you're the new owner, you have to build it up, meaning new sidewalks, new awnings, new everything. So it's like a work. We get it at a super low cost, but then because you're not the original owner, we're going to jack it up. And like, it went from maybe, let's say, a $400,000 deal to like 1.4. And then if you can't meet it, guess what? That property goes back to the building, to the venue, to the county.
Wow.
And like, if you remember that building, they were looking to sell it to me for like $100,000 to $150,000 for the entire thing. The parking lot alone was the size of what he said. It was bigger than a football field, and the train station's right there. I was like, man, I should buy this because I know in a bunch of years it's going to be worth something. And then I remember Ron telling me, don't, because it's probably grandfathered in. But once a new owner comes in, you have to build it all up to code, which is a worked code by the town. Anyway.
Yeah. I think, and that was a good call because it still sits in the exact same position, and the person that got it afterwards ran into that exact problem.
Really?
So, yeah, and it still sits in the exact same shape because nobody can afford to do the amount of bringing it back up to code that they would want to make it a music venue or an actual, even just a bar, you know?
Right.
So, but yeah, that parking lot itself, just for 4th of July or like things that they have parades and stuff like that. I mean, that parking lot just gets jam packed. People watching fireworks over the river, and the walkway is not too far away. It's a great spot, but it would have been like a cool idea for House of Hardcore, but how it worked out was even better, man.
Yep. And that's because of you guys. They basically, if I run a wrestling school, I get the building for free for rent. But then when there's, I had to run wrestling shows there, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. It's the only thing I've never really done and put my own money on it. And I loved it. I loved the first show. It holds one of my favorite matches of all time is Sami Callihan versus Rhino. I felt like that was the vision of professional wrestling for the future and where it was going to go. I just love that venue, me personally. And then, hey, I got a free wrestling school. I'll never forget when, and for our listeners, these guys were the trainers. I have no patience for, hey, you're doing something wrong. Like if you're talking to a child, don't put your hand on the oven because it's a hot stove and you're going to get burnt. You can do it once. And then sometimes with some wrestlers, my children would put their hands on the stove every time, like 40 times a day. And then I realized I have no patience for this, but thankfully, Vic and Hale did, because so they're the trainers, and I go from old school mentality. I will sit and watch and I will critique, but they also, I'm an older wrestler that I will get in the ring with them when they're better, but I'm not going to risk getting A, hurt, and B, they're taking all the bumps and teaching the roles. Hale is the master of the role. And teaching them. And we also did it old school way where you were on a mat and you had to earn your way to get into the ring. And that meant progressively like rolls on mats, chain wrestling. We would get you into the ring to take a bump, but once you mastered that, everything else happened on the floor. And it was a privilege to get into the ring to actually feel what a ring was all about. You guys were part of every one of my House of Hardcore shows. I loved my 6-mans with Dan Barry, Bill Carr was some of my favorites.
Yep.
And we had something super duper special. And for me, what I wanted, like my vision of wrestling, we came friggin' so close. And it's at times I get depressed about it. Other times, like things happen for a reason. It'll be okay. But like you were the guys that it was like you guys, Danny, Doring, Vic Travagliante, who's now Vic Joseph. Like, these are the people. I always wanted to surround myself with good people, but it was also like, when I make it, I want it to be all of us making it together and like celebrating, almost like what ECW was, because it was Paulie and Taz and myself and Bubba and Joey Styles and Ron and Charlie. Like, it was this whole group within a group to watch something build. And we had some awesome stuff. We also had some crappy stuff, but it was more awesome than it was crappy. And when I say crappy, it's all the BS leading into it, you know? But the shows were always good. And I always wanted you guys to like shine together. Then things went sour. I don't want to say like, but between injuries, and I was never able to capitalize on what truly I wanted for my vision. And it sucks because we came so close, but I'll always have those memories. But it was all because of you guys. And you guys, I love when people critique. I mean, hell, I work on Busted Open where people critique a Tony Khan. They'll critique a Vince McMahon. It's part of our job, and or online. And I've said this to Bubba a lot. Run one wrestling show. Put your money down or your family's future down. Run one show and you'll really see what it's about. And it's super duper hard and so much work. And we had that core with like our students, and they would work their way up, and hopefully like Ben Ortiz was probably the best student we ever produced. Unfortunately, he couldn't wrestle anymore because he sustained 2 injuries, and just realized it wasn't for him. But and I mean, I look at it too, because you guys were probably the last 2 after all of it to get an opportunity, in the sense of like, you just did the NWA stuff and you've been wrestling a long time, but every single person that I would use in House of Hardcore got signed somewhere else. And that it was so hard to build an actual company, but we did have a lot of fun. And I hold it as near and dear to my heart as I do the original ECW. It's they're neck and neck, because I really felt I was creating something, but I couldn't have done it without either of you two, because you also sparked that drive in my head. So I thank you for that. And I thank you for that publicly.
Thanks, Ty. That means a lot.
Yeah, man, it was.
Hale still can't cut promos though.
I might actually go cry now. Actually, hold on.
Well, that would show emotion better than you pointing.
That's great. I appreciate that, Tommy.
It was. I felt like it was like capturing some like one of the coolest moments in like in a bottle, because what we were able to do with House of Hardcore. I mean, how many do we have? 55.
I have no clue.
It was quite a bit. And if you watched it all back from the beginning to all the way to the end, Tommy tells a story throughout the House of Hardcore. Like, it's not just a one-off show here and there. There's a whole story that goes all the way through what House of Hardcore was, and how it was created and all of that stuff. And to be able to like be your trainers, but also to be like with you in those classes, and like have you critiquing matches and picking stuff apart and like offering feedback, and just like being able to pick your brain and continue to develop our friendship. It's, really invaluable to me. So thank you very much for that opportunity, just to have that chance to do that. And, you've always been somebody who's been so great to us with feedback and giving us any chance to shine that we could get. So I have to say thank you for that too.
Yeah, one thing for sure is like when we sat down and we sat down after we have like students, this is where I became I was always into like the psychology. Where I really learned it the most is when I used to sit down next to you and used to watch the matches with the students, and used to pick it apart and pick out all the things. And I'm like, man, I gotta do what Tommy does. I gotta make these guys better. So I'm gonna think of every aspect of psychology, everything needs to make sense. So I became obsessed with it. And since then, I just try to pick everything apart, try to make everything so much better, and just everything just made sense after just sitting next to you all those times, watching a match with you and having you just critique it like in front of the students. And I'm like, man, this is great. This is like this is so rare to have right now. And I was like, this is the best college you could ever go to.
I literally just looked at a tweet before we got on here, and it was Ricky Morton commenting about CM Punk and Dax Hardwood on their match that they had. And it was the best tweet ever. And he had 17 seconds of their match up on his thing. After we done this, you guys go read it and you'll be like, wow. And he wrote after that, what do I know? Hashtag the little things. And when you watch that, you will appreciate the art of professional wrestling. And I consider you two great professional wrestlers, but you'll appreciate it even more because then you're getting the knowledge from someone who's been doing it longer than me. And then years later, you'll be doing the same to other things or to other matches because it's just, that's the beauty and the art of what we do. I want to tell, I want the world to know your story, Vic, because you had a really, really, the biggest thing too, like after COVID, like for me, I had a lot of life-changing stuff, but like with House of Hardcore, I was just like, I have to, like, with the uncertainty of the world, I mean, could I still do it? Yeah. But I was like, I never just want to be an independent wrestling promotion. And I wanted to be bigger. And now like the landscape, there's no fit for a small company developing. You need like a Tony Khan back your company and sign a lot of guys. And he had a lot of money, the ability to do that. And then, hey, oh, by the way, I got television. And because, I mean, you guys knew about, I mean, when we had come really close to getting television. I also, the time me, you, Hale, you and I are in Manhattan at friggin' William Morrissey agency, and we're trying to, like, we're in the doors and we're pitched this television show and it's about to hit. And Mark Summers is going to be the producer, and we have all this really cool stuff. And like, we're so close. And then they say, oh, well, we represent the WWE and we can't do that. And I'm like, well, because it's a great idea. And you know, you come so close and that stuff happens. Anyway.
And then to top it all off, you got Cartoon.
Oh, yeah. Remember that? We had a walk. No, that was the good day because we really came out like, man, this TV show is going to hit. We were going to do, I'll tell, it was like almost a done deal. And everyone was going to be, I was like the veteran, and we were going to have House of Hardcore be the wrestling school. And then every week cameras follow us to like indie shows, and Zelina Vega was a part of it. And, you know, her story, Stryker, who had just gotten let go by WWE, Lance Anawae, whose father is Samu and his grandfather is Afa, like all, and we were going to follow us everywhere. And then we'd come back to House of Hardcore school and tell the story of what happened on the weekend. And, you know, we had all these scripted reality as well of what was going to happen. And it was just, and they loved it. And then all of a sudden the WWE machine comes in and goes, not happening. Anyway. But I want Vic to tell his story because yes, during the pandemic or pre-pandemic with you, you went through some life-changing stuff, and you almost weren't with us anymore. And this happens at an indie show. You literally break your leg.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I was wrestling a match December 1st, 2017, and we were wrestling in a ladder match for a tag team championship in the Northeast, and I jumped off the top rope to the floor, and it was going to be just a regular double axe handle kind of thing. And where I landed a little weird. My foot was halfway on the mat, halfway on the gym floor. So the shock absorption kind of just went straight up through my heel, and my bone in my leg, my tibia, shattered into 15 pieces right on the spot. And it was pretty bad. I couldn't finish the match. I'm going to say obviously, but I couldn't finish the match. I couldn't even roll over because my leg would stay in the same spot. So I tried to turn my body and my foot stayed all the way to the other side. But, you know, I got an external fixator put on and they kind of stabilized my leg. And I went through a couple weeks of that and then had to have a surgery where they put a steel plate on my tibia and across my ankle. A couple months later, it was March, and I had gotten cleared to walk. So I had just started taking like a step or two, really. And my father-in-law passed away unexpectedly on a trip. And we went to go and identify his body and the funeral home and all of those things. And I took a step. This time when I broke my leg, I broke the titanium plates that were across my bone. I broke them in half. And I needed to have a steel rod put in from top of my knee down to my ankle and have some more plates put across my ankle. It required 2 more surgeries to do that. And then it got infected. When it got infected, it was pretty bad because when an infection gets to the metal inside of your body, you have to remove the metal because you'll never be able to get the infection out. So the infection, it went the whole length of the scar, and I have a scar from the top of my knee to the bottom of my foot. And every day it was kind of like getting pretty bad. So for 2 weeks, I had no visitors in the hospital. I was by myself. They told me they were going to cut my leg off every day. I was getting, just depressed and sad. I had 3 little kids at home, and I wasn't going to be able to participate there. I had lost all my income from work. Everything I did at that point, I was doing gig economy work where I was just kind of picking up jobs here and there. And I had a pretty steady schedule, but it was some work I would need to do without a broken leg. And my wife at the time was staying home with the kids. So the income from there wasn't, we had kids 18 months apart. So there's 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kid, it was bam, bam, bam. And my daughter was only 8 months when I broke my leg. So to go through all that and try to come back from getting the leg fixed, I had to do all these special things where they suck out all of the bad stuff through your leg. And it really went on for a long time. It took a full year before I could walk any kind of normal. They told me I'd never walk again or never run again. And they told me I would definitely never professional wrestle again. That was going to be completely out of the cards. So if I wanted to get involved with wrestling, it would have to be announcing. It would have to be something, not wrestling. So at the same time that was going on, I was battling a pretty severe alcohol addiction because I had self-medicated a lot through being depressed through the leg thing. And my problem with alcohol started even before that, when just in professional wrestling, you feel like the party's never going to stop. And some of it just got out of control for me. And trying to balance going to a real life with having not achieved the dreams that I wanted to, I struggled with it really hard. And I also went through divorce at the same time. So I got myself sober. That was the first step. So I'm 3 years sober on March 17th. I have got myself into the best shape that I possibly could. And I just kind of wanted to start dropping weight. So I lost as much body fat as I could to start with. I lost over 120 pounds and then just started adding muscle. And I spent my time through the pandemic in the gym, and every day just became kind of about that with what I was eating. And I noticed that when I started to lose weight and I started to work out harder, that I was starting to get the mobility back in my leg. And I had no feeling in any of my toes. And having the feeling come back in my toes started to encourage me that maybe I could do this. Maybe I could try to get back in there. And I started out doing a couple forward rolls, and it felt okay. Then I started running the ropes a little bit, and that felt okay. And then I started just kind of dipping my toe back in just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then, it was very emotional for me. I would cry when I would do something. I don't cry now, but just being able to shoot a guy off to a drop down and get back up. It was emotional for me because I thought that it was going to be ripped away from me forever. And I didn't think I would ever get a chance to do this again. So every day I was kind of staring down that barrel that I was never going to get to have that outlet that I really needed. Whether or not it was on a smaller stage or a big one, it was something that I needed for myself. And I love wrestling. I can't imagine not having it in my life. So through stuff, I was able to just get full range of motion back in my leg. And in September this year, we started back in teaming again, really well for himself and for him to, and really just kind of go full in. There was a lot of times in our past where I wasn't there for him, where he needed me to be, because I was focused on other things or distracted or thought that I knew a better way to do things when I necessarily did. And I had promised Hale that when we came back to do this time, that I was going to be the absolute best version of myself that I could be, because I felt I owed it to him. What we have here as a team and this passion that we have and the ability and the time that we've put into this, that as cliche as it sounds, that now is the right time for us, because we're doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it because we really love it, and it's not about anything else other than leaving our mark in wrestling. And we've been wrestling ghosts. We've been in all of the right places at all of the wrong times and met all of the right people. And one shot, that one thing that would leave that little bit of a legacy behind. And I feel that through staying positive, having the right attitude, and just, man, it's like, it's not all you that can do this. You have to give it up to a higher power, because it's just sometimes like, it's unexplainable, like how it all works out. When they're going to tell you they're going to cut your leg off and you're never going to run again, but then you're in the ring and I'm German suplexing Jay Briscoe last weekend with a full bridge, like, it didn't hurt at all. So for me, that's like, that's making it. That's part of like this journey of like proving to myself that like I could do it. I could come back. I was better than the things that I was letting control me and hold me back. And I'm just like very grateful for the chance that I have right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that. You didn't have to go about your personal life. I was talking more about the injury, but
it all makes up the same story.
No,
like,
I know.
It's a whole transformation for me, and like my outlook on life is very different, and I had to go through a lot of really hard things to be the best version of me. And I really don't feel that you can ever really make a change for yourself unless you go through some of that hard stuff.
Isn't March 17th also St. Patrick's Day?
Yes, sir.
I love the fact that you quit drinking on the day where everyone is supposed to drink.
Yeah, man.
Dude, I remember texting you when that was going down, and you're like, yeah, man, I might lose my leg. And I was like, what? And then I remember when you were on the rehab the first time and things are going good, and then you text me the picture of your broken titanium leg. And I was just like, what the F? Excuse me. Anyway, that's a great promo. You need to keep that in your back pocket about wrestling ghosts. That's a strong statement. It literally, your comment made me want to start House of Hardcore again and tell your story. And I hope if I'm not able to tell your story, somebody is. And hopefully that's Billy or even, somebody else, because it's all about the journey to get you to where you are. And you're a testament to your partner is really what tag team wrestling is all about. And we joke about, Hale having the inability to talk, all that stuff, but Hale is your partner, and it's a commitment. It's a commitment just like anything else is. And, you going at this and from literally, hey, I may lose my leg, or, okay, now I'm learning how to re-walk, and now you're back wrestling at the level that you're wrestling. And then I love wrestling because of the fact of I popped when I heard that you were part of the Crockett Cup. And then to see the match and then to see like what you guys are doing. And I know the Briscoes and I know what a great tag team they are. And there's victory and loss, and a larger platform got to see what I've seen in you guys for a long time. So I hope that continues for you guys. And that's also a big reason why I wanted to do the podcast, because there's a lot of, man, you put it the best, but there's a lot of people whose stories never get told. And, you know, the one thing that troubled me when you said it, of you're saying like, by you saying you didn't make it was heavy on you and like was hard to deal with. But yet, if you really think about it, somebody that you paid tickets to see, and that's me, entrusted you with a lot of things, or also put you on his shows. And then when you did get hurt, what did I do? I made you an announcer, because I know what you could.
Sure did.
And as crazy as Hale gets, and Hale would get lost in his head, I'm like, dude, you could just relax. Because I would try to find something for you. And if, like, I knew if my company blew up, you guys would have been there. So until I win that Powerball, we still got to wait, but it's okay, because I want to see you shine somewhere else, the both of you. And Hale, you better friggin' learn how to cut a promo after this friggin' conversation, because the world's going to now know that you don't know how to talk, or you're going to get a friggin' really good manager, but there's no babyface good managers out there cutting promos for you.
Thank you, Tommy.
I don't want to go anywhere else with this, because the message is so strong. And I know you guys want to live in the now, but it's also, when they say it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's also about perseverance. And when you said you're the best version of yourself, I love it, because I've known you and been your friend. And the fact that I get to be your friend with the best version of yourself is awesome. And I know the wrestling fans will appreciate you guys even more. How do we find you on social media? Vic,
plug it in. Vic, plug us both in while you're at it.
Yeah, you got it, man. You can find me on Twitter at the now Vic. Hale is on Twitter at Hale Collins. On Instagram, it's Hale_Collins, and on Instagram, it's at Vik Dalishus for me. And then our Facebook page, super unique. It's Vic Hale as our name. So it's both our first names as our name. We share the Facebook. So you're always talking to one of us.
That's cool. And again, if there's a message for people out there, and this isn't just for wrestlers, if you're struggling, if you think there is no hope, you just found a guy who was at rock bottom and is at the best place in his world that he can be. And he's not an unknown wrestler, because the best things are going to happen to him for the future. So if it could happen for him, it could happen for anybody. So, and if you can't talk, well, then don't go to Hale, because you won't learn how to talk. So Hale, you did great on this podcast.
Hey, thanks.
You spoke, you told good stories. You were interesting. That's what you need to convey when you're got a minute to sell yourself, because you can do it.
Yeah. All right.
There it is. That's the in-depth.
And there it was.
All right, guys, I got to roll. It was great seeing you, and we got to catch up in person after WrestleMania, because I plan on eating a lot of food.